Hey guys, it is October 7th. We've got ourselves a Heroes of the Storm balance patch, and if you guys are unfamiliar with how I do balance patches, I like to look at the balance on the hero first, what has changed, and then I like to explain how that's going to affect Storm League and how that's going to affect the competitive scene. Alongside how it might adjust the playstyle of the hero a little bit, if it's a rework or whatever. So far, what we've seen in the past, or at least what's happened, what we're kind of expecting, we've seen medallions hit, which means that some of the heroes that might have gotten nerfs for medallions might see some buffs. One of the biggest hits that I've seen personally is Jaina, because Ring of Frost is very weak now, because it's very easy to medallion out of, and you lose a huge amount of your value, since when they medallion, they're also going to remove all the slows and be able to get out of your blizzard or whatever you just set up with that awesome ring. So like Jaina's seen a little bit of nerf. So medallion's been out for a bit. We'll most likely see some buffs on those. D.Va's been absolutely dominant right now, so I'd imagine we'd see some nerfs there. I've already watched this or read these, so it's not like I'm really anything's new. So on the side of brawls or ARAMs, Lost Vikings and rework are going to be removed from ARAM for a little while until they can figure out what's causing it to show as false positives for intentional feeding, which they kind of are intentionally feeding. If you've seen like how some reworks play on ARAMs, they'll go straight to like the keep, not the core, the keep, and they'll just die repeatedly and come back to life and just get an auto attack and a swing and die, an auto attack, a swing and die, an auto attack, and swing and die. They'll take out the keep pretty early on, before level 10, and then they'll just go over and they'll just hit the fort, auto attack and die, auto attack and die, auto attack and die, and then they go to the core, and it's like, it's really hard to deal with. So it's not always false positives. It's actually like something that people are doing. Yes, it does win the game, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is really infuriating to play against. So I'm not too upset about these, honestly. Map towers, forts, keeps, damage to heroes increased by 10%. Cool. Healing fountain. So this is something that's not exactly what people have been asking for, but it is kind of nice. Health and shield values have swapped. The shield now accounts for 75% of the total health, and that shield is regenning. So whenever it's not taking damage, it's going to regen. So if you've got someone like a Zagara that's trying to destroy a fountain behind a wall, she probably won't ever be able to do it, because she needs to throw all of her abilities out, and it won't destroy the shield. Now she has to wait for all of her abilities to come back, and the shield will regen by that time. But people like Genji or Tracer can still take these out pretty easily, because it's the same amount of health, and they usually do it in one go. So overall, this probably won't change too much for the meta, but it is a kind of a nice change for people that are in Storm League and just don't want like someone to cheese it by hitting it a couple times. Heroes. Honestly, I'm not going to talk too much about the roles, because there's not one role that gets a lot more changes than the other ones. Two more on range than Bruiser, but for the most part, we'll talk about it when we get there. Anub'arak, health increase, very small amount of health increase, nothing too crazy. I think it's like a 2.25%, 2.3%, something like that. Burning Beetles gets a small nerf here. Debilitation has an adjusted functionality. Enemies hit by Burrow Charge or Impale have their spell power reduced. I think this makes this talent a lot better, because you can quickly throw out your Q to lower some spell damage without needing to always jump in there. You still lose one of the best talents in level 16, though, which is a larger radius on your stun that also lowers the cooldown of the stun. So I don't think that this will really affect the competitive scene too much. But I do kind of want to talk about Beetlejuiced and Burning Beetles. So there's an adjusted functionality on Beetlejuiced. It says Beetles gain increased health. It always did that. But it used to be every third basic attack against a hero spawns a beetle. Now it's every fourth basic attack spawns a beetle. I've actually said this was the only thing really holding this talent back, is that you can't spawn beetles unless you're attacking a hero, and because you're such a low health tank, you can't spend a lot of time auto-attacking heroes. So now you can spawn beetles by attacking anything, which he's already one of those that if you're sieging, he can pretty much keep beetles spawned enough to where you have almost a mini Sylvanas going in the tank role. With Beetlejuice, that means that it increases your speed to clear structures or camps by a decent amount. So overall, I think that this could make a pretty big difference in Storm League, but I don't expect to see Anub'arak being picked too much more in the competitive than he already was being picked. Cho'gall has actually been pretty dominant. The stun build in particular, I've said that the stun orbs need to drop down to like a 0.5 second or change where those talents are. Because ultimately, Cho'gall, if not countered, has been winning about 80% of their games. It's crazy. So, Cho and Rage Regeneration, healing reductions being reduced. It's a small nerf, but nothing too crazy. Diablo. They're buffing W build and they're nerfing auto attack build. The nerf on auto attack build is just simply you can't use Fire Stomp, or you can't lower the cooldown of Fire Stomp. That doesn't actually affect auto attack build in a team fight. Generally what people did with this was they used it for wave clear. So you would go auto attack build and then you'd use your W and you would lower the cooldown of your W and then you would clear waves faster. But in team fights it usually wasn't worth it to cast W because you would rip through your mana too fast and you wouldn't gain much more survivability or much more damage. So this is effectively removing the wave clear from the auto attack build. And then W build is getting two pretty solid buffs. The first one is W is going to reduce the cooldown by taking the level 7 talent, which will make it to where if you stun someone with your Q or your E, you reset your W. Not only is it going to do that, even if you don't land the stun, it's just going to just flat out reduce the cooldown of your Fire Stomp. And then also the amount of mana return from getting that stun and that reset has increased. So W build's going to get a little bit more consistent. And then also Hellfire will stack faster. So instead of 15 stacks, you only need 10 for it to start doing the fire around you, for you to have the 30% spell power. So again, it's more of a consistency thing, because generally what happened before is if you were in a position where everyone is clustered, you pretty much could wipe a team. But if you weren't in an area where people were clustered, you just didn't have that consistency. So W build got even more consistent, and it was already one of the most consistent builds. The Korean players actually use W build more often than Q build, and I think the reason is primarily because it was more consistent in the competitive scene. I think this is going to make W build more popular and competitive. I think auto attack build in Storm League is still just generally better, just because you're practically unkillable if you have those 100 souls. You have a ton of CC. E.T.C getting 2 nerfs, one on Encore, lowering the cooldown reduction for hitting people with your W from 6 to 5%. Pretty close. I think I said 4% is the number that I felt that should be at, to where the other talents are still competitive again. Rockstar, the armor bonus is being reduced. This is actually pretty huge, and this will effectively lower where E.T.C's positioned in the competitive scene. It won't really affect Storm League too much, but this will effectively lower where he stands in the competitive scene. Bruiser. Deathwing is getting a nerf on his Incinerate, increasing the energy cost and also reducing the damage at the same time. This is a pretty significant nerf. Lava Burst. Energy cost is being reduced, and that's in your other form, World Breaker, I believe. So Destroyer form, the little poof of fire, versus World Breaker, where it's like the pop and then it's just like magma on the ground. So they're buffing World Breaker, it seems like. Infernus adjusted functionality, increases the damage of Molten Flame against heroes, against enemy heroes by 25%. Increase the bonus when it's at higher energy. So this is buffing the Q talent level 4. I've actually talked about this talent a little bit, and the potential of this talent. So it's actually a pretty interesting talent. It's even better now. And remember that this is only to heroes. This doesn't affect your wave clear, but I don't know. It's definitely an interesting talent. I don't really like the idea of going too heavy into Q build, purely because people can just move around and adjust off of your Q casts. But I do think Q build is one of the strongest builds. If people stand still, or if people are ever caught in a choke point, Q build is one of those builds where casting one ability can end an entire game. And it's an ability with essentially no cooldown as well. So that's kind of the cool part about it, because once you hit 16, your Q does so much DPS in clusters that one Q can full health to 0 any hero in the game, and if there's a bunch of people that are there, I mean, you're wiping them. It's actually, I believe at level 16 it does more damage than Lightning Breath. And so if you catch people in a cluster, it's pretty insane. Meteor damage is being increased on your Firestorm. Overall, I mean, this isn't really going to change his position in the meta too much. It'll slightly nerf W build, but you never really had energy issues in W build. And as far as the damage reduction, it's light. So I feel like this isn't going to affect him too much in competitive. But as far as Storm League, I think Q build is actually kind of insane. Especially if you're on a map where people have to fight on points or people have to fight in little areas. So, for example, if you're on Infernal Shrines or you're on Volskaya, feel free to just take Q build and then just toss a Q out there. I would avoid this on maps like Braxis or Dragonshire where fights are going to be more spread out, but on those clustered fights on certain maps, Q build's pretty good for Storm League. So D.Va's going to see a lot of little nerfs. Mech weapon damage is being reduced, and remember that the way that this works, it's being reduced, and even though it's only being reduced by 1, the speed that she fires makes that 1 a pretty big nerf. The amount that her damage gets enhanced by being closer to targets makes that 1 also inflate a little bit further, and the amount that she heals if you take like the level 1 talent will also be nerfed. So this is actually a pretty big nerf. By taking just the level 1 talent on D.Va that made it to where you healed off of the damage you dealt with your basic attack, you could solo almost any camp in the game, and not a lot of people realize this, but like you could actually solo like bruisers at level 1. You could solo the bruiser camps on Braxis as well. It was wild. Rushdown, bonus damage to non-heroics reduced, bonus damage to heroes reduced. Q build has been pretty dominant. W build was very powerful but easily counterable, which is honestly my favorite types of builds. My favorite hero design and build designs are the ones that are extremely powerful but have very obvious counterplay, or counterplay that just like everyone realizes what they should be doing to counter this, because then it's just a game of skill really at that point. So I like powerful heroes that have easy counterplay, and that's why I liked W build. It was like a more powerful version of Leoric, but it had a major counterplay, which is what I really liked. So I kind of hope they don't nerf W too much, but the Q build had almost no counterplay, and it had almost a 65% win rate. So I like that they're taking Q build and they're just doing what they can about it. Aggressive Matrix, cooldown reduction increased. Oh, so they're buffing W build actually. Bunny Hop, cooldown reduced. I really liked Bunny Hop. Micro missiles, damage reduced by a little amount. I actually really like both of these changes. Target locked, requirement for armor and movement speed to activate reduced. I love all of these changes. I don't know if the Q build nerfs are going to be enough. Is this alone going to reduce the win rate from 65% down to 50%? No. There's no question about that. And this both put together will not do that. However, it's a step in the right direction. In Storm League, I still think that D.Va is going to be one of the strongest heroes. In competitive, I still think D.Va is going to be extremely strong. So, I would say yes. W build just got a lot better, and it was already at like a 55% win rate, so that's kind of wild that they did that. But at the same time, overall, I think D.Va's in a pretty good spot for W build. I think Q build is, I would still consider it extremely strong. Gazlowe, I didn't actually think that he needed buffs. Last time I checked, Gazlowe was sitting at a little bit above a 50% win rate, and people were saying that his rework was a disaster, but in reality, he still had a little bit above a 50% win rate. I figured they would, if they were going to buff him at all, they would nerf things to kind of balance it out a little bit, but this is actually kind of an overall buff. They're buffing his health, they're buffing his turret damage, they're buffing his laser damage, and they're buffing his range. I personally think this is going to make Gazlowe overpowered, but I could be wrong. Rocket Boots, damage bonus is being increased. One-man Wrecking Crew's passive bonus is being increased. Easy peasy. Dimensional Ripper, cooldown reduction. The cooldown's being reduced. The armor bonus is being... I mean, this is just a flat across-the-board buff to everything, which is actually really crazy to me because, again, his win rate was a little above 50% last time I checked. So I'm a little surprised because I think this guy's going to be absolutely busted. I mean, yeah, this is kind of insane, actually. I think he's going to move up quite a bit. B or A tier, if there was a tier list for Storm League, I think he's definitely moved up. Because he already was pretty strong. I'm not going to say he was strong, but people were using him wrong. It wasn't even that. I think that people just didn't realize that even though he felt a little weaker, he was actually getting a lot of work done. You need to be careful about when they add a more reliable CC to a hero, that, like, they nerfed his damage numbers, but they gave him a more reliable CC. And when you give someone a more reliable CC, it allows much of a stronger team fight, and his ult and stun combos and stuff are so much more reliable now than they were before, and his stuns are much more reliable in general. So you have to nerf to compensate for stuff like that. And so his win rate was reasonable, even though he might have felt kind of bad to play. He was doing really well. So I'm actually kind of concerned about this one, but I don't know. I mean, I'd imagine this is going to bump Gazlowe's win rate up to like 53% ish. Imperius. Q build is being nerfed. Holy Fervor is getting buffed. I mean, that's the thing about Imperius is, like, it's his stats. It's his baseline stats that make him so strong, because I still think auto attack build was... I've said this since I made the video that said, like, Imperius in low ranks. I've said that auto attack Imperius is a really great build to carry in low ranks with, because you have so much health and survivability, and then if you even land a spear on 2 or 3 people at a time, you just wipe their team. And so I kind of feel that they're gonna start buffing auto attack build, and people will realize that that's overpowered too. But at the same time, Q-Build did need some nerfs, and I think this is the talent that they should be focusing on. I don't really think this talent makes any major difference, but this talent is definitely the talent they want to be focusing on. In the competitive scene, I think Imperius will still be very strong. I definitely don't think that he's going to be overpowered, but I think that he'll still be very strong. This nerf isn't really that big. In Storm League, I still think that he'd be very strong. So overall, don't feel bad picking Imperius after these nerfs. He's still in a good spot. Yrel, Hand of Freedom, is just getting a slight nerf. I actually think that with this nerf, there is potential that some teams will pick this talent less. One of the particular teams I think that will start doing it is the Korean teams, because they're already taking the level 7 talent that increases their movement speed by 20% while they're channeling their W. So they play different, and they don't even really need this talent at all. So I think this talent's going to start shifting more back to being a counterpick to Roots, where instead of just being something that you just always pick to get out of situations. I think Liam's definitely still going to be taking talents like this, because of his playstyle is more jump in, knock back, get movement speed, and run out. Jump in, do more damage, knock back. And he plays more of that in out, where the Koreans play more of just zoning as many people as possible while channeling your W, which means that they'll actually get more value out of some of the other talents. But I don't think people are going to go back to the playstyle of giving armor to their team, and I think they're too far away to get value out of the trait, so it still may be the talent we see for quite a while, unless one of the other 2 talents gets buffed in some way, particularly the range of either of those 2 other talents. Healer, Alexstrasza. The Regen Globe quest requirements are going down. Now, the interesting thing about W build Alexstrasza is back when the pro scene was a thing, we actually only really saw W build Alexstrasza because it was really reliable and people could utilize those Ws. So we saw a lot more W build Alexstrasza than we saw. I mean, we saw Q and we saw W, but we saw a lot of variants of W build. We never really saw E build. And then we saw variants of like W and then Q at 7. But that's what we saw a lot of. W build was extremely strong. Seeing as they're lowering the requirements and also buffing the level 7, which means that you can heal yourself more in your own W. And then this also still increases the value of Regen Globes, and because you'll be getting the Regen Globes faster, this will be really powerful. I still always think that this talent's really good with people like Diablo, who you can take a level 1 talent that makes it to where globes heal you for more, and then suddenly you're healing him for a fountain worth of health every time that the globe lands, which is very often. That can hit all the time. Lifebinder's getting a slight buff. Same reasons apply. I think that it's really good depending on your comp, but in most cases, if you're going to be going... most cases you're just going to go the other ult. Just allows you to heal more people around the fights. But if one person's getting focused, or if your team's mostly backline, Lifebinder can be really good. Tough Love, the armor bonus is being increased. This probably isn't enough to make it worth it even still. I mean, the Q build could potentially take it now just because the cooldown's low enough. But the problem that I always find with this talent, and the reason why I think this talent needs to be more worth it, or it needs to give you armor when you heal them as well as they get armor. And here's the reason why. In Q build, you need to be picking up flowers. If someone's taking damage, then they're probably in a position to take damage, which means that if you heal them and you go to pick up that flower, you're going to take the damage that was aimed at them, which is why I don't really like that talent, because then you're going to go below 75% health and you're going to be at risk, which means you're not going to be able to throw out as many Qs. So I don't really like that. I would rather use the Qs on people who are stepping away from fights that are no longer going to be taking damage, which means the armor is useless. You can pick up the flowers safely, and then you can heal the front line with something like Lifebinder, which is why they could buff this up to 50 armor, and I still don't know if I would take this talent. When 50 armor is huge. I built my entire Uther build around 50 armor. So if that's where I'm at on this. Overprotective shield amounts being increased. Again, this is only the amount healed, and that's where this talent really struggles. Both of these you're going to want to just go Dragon Form for longer. And then the rest of these talents, I think W build's actually in a really good spot now. Like, I actually thought Alexstrasza was in a good spot. Her win rate was a little low, but I think it's because people have been playing her wrong. Now, that's the example I mentioned earlier. I was like, I'm not going to say that, but Alexstrasza is my number one reason of she seems easy to play, but she isn't. And people are playing her wrong, which is why her win rate's low. But these buffs are going to be pretty incredible. If you know how to play Alexstrasza correctly, you know when to use your Dragon Form, you know how to do the combo, the W trait W, you know where to place Ws where you're not going to like bait your team into things. If you know how to play Alexstrasza correctly, I personally think that she's in a very strong spot. Ana, Biotic Grenade. Healing reduction duration is being reduced. It's frustrating because it's like, this is a cool aspect about Ana, but it kind of needed to happen. It's still like nowhere near as powerful as it is in Overwatch, but I don't know. I mean, this feels bad, but whatever. Healing reduction duration bonus changed from 25% to 0.75 seconds. I believe that puts it... I believe this talent keeps it exactly where it is, so it makes this talent a little bit more valuable, but it makes not taking this talent hurt a little bit more. Slumber Shells, cooldown reduction on Sleep Dart reduced from 4 to 2, and Night Terrors damage reduction from 10 to 8%. I actually think if you're going E-build now, you don't take this talent, and instead you're going to take I don't know. I think the 10% or the 8% is still really good in a lot of situations, like against a Diablo or something, but I actually feel like these days you should be going back to the old, like, applying doses, and then your doses lower spell damage, and then if you apply doses with your E, you could go with the concentrated darts, which is going to increase your healing as well. This Ana will still be a pretty high priority in the competitive scene because of Nano Boost. If Nano Boost isn't getting nerfed, then we're not going to see a lot of changes with Ana. But at the same time, I do think this is getting her away from wanting to pick her in Storm League and outside of competitive. So if you are playing Ana in Storm League, I would be a little worried. But as far as competitive, she still fits in competitive for sure. As long as you have a good nano target and you have good usage of your W, she is still a top tier pick for sure. But as far as Storm League, I wouldn't be picking Ana too much anymore. It's just way too much work that you have to play at a really high level to... Outside of coordinated environments, you're just not going to see that much value. I can't tell you how many times I played Ana and like nano boosted a target right as a fight's going, and they like walk away because they don't know what's happening, and they walk back and like waste the first half of nano boost. Anduin, he needs the healing buffs. He's actually one of the lowest win rate healers in the game right now, and so I think they're buffing all of his just like standard stuff, which is cool. I don't know if this heal buff is going to be enough. It certainly is better if you don't take bold strategy. This heal buff is going to be worth a lot more. If you do take bold strategy, this heal buff is going to feel less important. So I definitely think this is going to nerf bold strategy even further. I already didn't think it was that good of a talent, and now with Flash Heal being buffed, you don't want to lower the cooldown or increase the cooldown of flash heal. And then Holy Word Salvation getting a buff. I think this talent definitely has its merit. I think Light Bomb is generally picked, and it's great when you combo it with your team. But I definitely think there's a point where like numbers just get better than utility, and we're getting pretty close to that. Same thing, Leap getting a lower cooldown. I think that's totally worth it. Let's go on to Uther. Guardian of Ancient Kings is getting a flat armor instead of your trait now gives 50 armor instead of 25. The flat armor is nice because it gives you flat armor for 3 seconds instead of if you don't take the level 1 talent, you would have only gotten Guardian of the Ancient Kings for 2 seconds, and if you would have taken the level 1 talent, you only get it for 2.5. Now you get it for 3 seconds, which is just nice. It's a good talent. I actually think it's a really good talent, especially like unless cleanse is absolutely necessary. I would rather give someone 50 armor so that the enemy team wastes all of their abilities dumping that onto that person rather than giving them a cleanse and then the enemies save all those abilities for later. I would rather effectively double the health of whoever is there rather than cleansing them in a lot of situations, unless like someone's getting hooked and you cleanse them, because then they're gonna die whether or not you give them armor. So yeah, overall probably won't make too much of a difference where he's at in competitive, but I do think this talent's really good for Storm League. Kerrigan, Q build's getting buffed. Actually, all of her underutilized talents are getting buffed. So I'm not going to talk too heavily on it, but Q build's getting buffed, E build's getting buffed. And just trait in general. Queen of Blades, new functionality on the level 7 Queen of Blades. Reduce the cooldown of Ravage by 2 seconds and increase its damage to minions and mercs by 50%. It's pretty solid. Then we have Maelstrom. Its mana cost is being reduced, range is being increased, which is always nice. Mana cost is being reduced of Ultralisk, and we've got the upgrade additional functionality, increase the health and attack damage of Ultralisk. So overall, this is pretty good changes for Kerrigan. Samuro, Windwalk, bonus movement speed is being reduced. Crushing blows, bonus damage is being reduced. Overall, actually, I think Samuro, I said this a while back, I think like probably 5 or 6 patch notes videos back, I said Samuro was probably the best hero in the game. It's just that he's so difficult to play at his best that they never need to actually nerf him. And it kind of feels like they finally are just hitting him. They are buffing like Mirror Image Bladestorm damage and the upgrades at level 20, but they are nerfing like some of the things that made him very, very powerful. Gall. Okay, I was saying 0.5 was the number I wanted to see the stun duration reduced to on Leaden Orbs. 0.75 is close, but I think he'll still be pretty strong. No longer passively reduce the cooldown of Dread Orbs. Oh. Damage per bounce reduced. Yeah, actually, I think these are pretty good nerfs. I still think that he'll be pretty dominant in the right situations, and also in some okay situations, he'll be pretty dominant. If he's ever picked in a draft without an enemy to counter it, it's still going to be a very, very powerful build as long as you can get to 16. Jaina, they're buffing underutilized talents here. Arcane Intellect, additional functionality while above 75% mana, gain 10% spell power. This is actually kind of cool because it's on a level 4 talent, and not a lot of the level 4 talents actually increase your damage. So having 10% more spell power is kind of nice. So I actually really, really like this talent. You can also get another 10% by taking the Globe Quest at 1, and that'll also allow you to have a higher chance of having a high mana to get this extra spell power. So if you take the Globe talent at 1 and this at level 4, you pretty much just have a flat 20% increased spell power, which is really cool and has a lot of potential. The downside is that you lose Pierce in the meta build, but I think that's honestly, I think that's a fair trade. You lose Pierce, but you have just more spell power, which means your Blizzard's going to be doing more damage, your Cone's going to be doing more damage. I think that's a really, really decent trade-off. And with 2 different mana talents, you're never going to run out of mana in these fights. So I think this talent is very good now. Frost Armor, the armor amount's being increased. I think this is a decent talent, but I actually feel like this talent's overrated. But, I mean, now that it's buffed, I think it's finally rated well. If you're getting dove by a Greymane or an Illidan, and you see those on the enemy team, they're constantly diving you, then yeah, I think this is a good talent. And then Ice Fury 1's getting a pretty decent buff. This talent's been getting a lot of buffs. If you don't know what this talent does, it effectively makes it to where when you basic attack a chilled target, it'll reduce the cooldown of your Blizzard by 2.5 seconds. Well, I said that what was holding this talent back after even a couple buffs of it is that it needs to increase your range. Jaina's basic attack range is very short. And it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to safely do. Jaina works best when you play that in and out playstyle. You go in, you throw all of your abilities, you get out. You wait for a couple of abilities to come back, you go in, you throw a couple of abilities, you get out. You play very safe and you're never really at risk. Ice Fury Wand getting buffed is certainly something that can make it more viable, especially since they have some very powerful W talents. But I also don't like that one of the best W talents is competing with Icy Veins, which is the second ultimate ability. So I would say that in Storm League, this talent, the W build got a pretty significant buff, but as far as competitive, the meta build's still gonna be the meta build. The only thing that might be different is this might take over the level 4 slot. Depending on the maps. If you need the Pierce because you're going to be fighting around minions, then that's that. But if you're just going to be fighting like in the middle of nowhere, then I think that this talent is going to take over Pierce. Especially if your Blizzard's doing more damage, that might wipe the minions a little bit faster, so the Pierce is a little less necessary. You do lose some camp clear by losing Pierce, but 10% more spell power also helps a little bit with camp clear. So at the end of the day, I really think this talent is going to probably take over in the competitive scene and also in W build. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Mephisto, Hateful Mending, Q build, huge buff, really. The healing's being increased, and it's going to give mana back, which was one of the downsides of Q build. A lot of people started going more W build because it was a little bit more mana efficient, and you can last a lot longer in fights. But having Q build be able to do that is really, really nice. So that's what's great about that. Then we have Animosity. It was just an underutilized talent. I don't think this will really change. The other level 16 talents are so strong. Percent health or being able to completely burst a team in Q build is way more valuable than just like a little bit more damage on your W in longer duration. And then Unspeakable Horrors, additional functionality. Enemies are also silenced while they are rooted. Now this right here completely changes how powerful this talent is, and I would no longer pick Mimic anymore. This is what I was saying is all that would be necessary to make this talent absolutely busted. So what this does now is when you silence someone, or when you hit someone with Durance, they're immediately silenced, and then they're silenced for 3 seconds after the root ends. Because Durance is a pretty long duration root, this is a huge silence and a huge game-changing thing, especially on a 50-second cooldown ultimate ability that can be reduced if you take the talent at, I think it's level 13, that can reduce your ult cooldown by using your other stuff. Meaning that you could be effectively rooting huge amounts of people on their team and also silencing a huge amount of their team really easily. It's crazy. And then we have Sylvanas, Lost Soul. I actually thought this talent was really, really good, and I've been practicing with W on 7 and 13, lowering their armor, and also getting a bunch of Ws. And I really like the idea of having that extra damage. Festering Wound bonus damage reduced is going to nerf that talent a little bit, but it probably won't shy too many people away from this talent. In Storm League, this build is still very good for diving in, killing one person, and then just hopping away. So it'll still do effectively that, but I do think that Lost Souls will be a little bit better for sustained damage builds. Mind Control is getting a slight buff, but I don't think that this is really going to change. That the Silence Arrow is so good, and Mind Control is not that good. I like the low cooldown. I like low cooldown ults in general, but whatever. Tassadar, Plasma Shield. It's being reduced from 15 to 12% of maximum health. And then we have Black Hole. Cooldown is being reduced. And then we have the, what was it? This is the worst. I looked this up on how to pronounce this officially. But I'm just going to butcher it. It's like Cho'gall Blitz. I'm trying to remember. It doesn't really matter. Reduce the armor of enemies hit by it. I think this is actually where this talent gets really good. Generally, I was taking Wall. When I was taking Black Hole, I was just taking Wall. But I like the 60-second cooldown on Black Hole. They're buffing underutilized talents. They're nerfing a very popular talent. I think overall, this is a really good change to Tassadar. So it's really good. Since I already played Black Hole, I really like this change. I'll try this out now that it reduces armor, because remember that it also still creates a bunch of Ws, a bunch of Psy Storms as well, so I'll definitely try it out. Tracer, basic attack damage is being lowered. Same rules apply to D.Va. It seems like a small change, but it's actually a lot bigger. Leeching Rounds adjusted functionality. Increase the healing from basic attacks against heroes by an additional 5%. It's further increased for each blink charge you currently have, so up to 20%. Is that a health pack? Cooldown reduction on the healing fountain while gathering regen globes increased. So they're just trying to get rid of the reliance on that ult talent on level 4. And then Telefrag, cooldown reduction increased from 0.25 to 0.3125, which also, again, buffing underutilized talents, nothing too crazy. Tychus, this is actually kind of a really mini rework. They're trying to move back some of his power, so he's not so strong in the early portions of the game, but he's a little bit stronger in the later portions. They're moving quarterback, which is your W range, to level 1. Press the advantage. New functionality increases Tychus's basic attack range by 1. This is just a flat functionality change. So press the advantage no longer has anything to do with movement speed or your E or anything like that. It's purely just, you take this talent, your basic attack range is increased. Which, in my opinion, is going to be just a natural requirement to take. But I again, for other people, quarterback was still a very good talent for finishing people off. Bigger they are. No longer reduces the cooldown of minigun, but instead of lowering someone's health from 100% down to 35% while your trait's active, you can now do it to 30%. I think this is a really good trade-off. The cooldown reduction, bigger they are, wasn't that big of a deal. And it wasn't necessary, and I think this is a great trade-off. Master Assassin additional functionality, adjusted functionality. 10% attack speed flat when you take the talent. A quest, after getting 15 takedowns, gain 15% more attack speed. Still isn't going to be better than bigger they are. Concussion Grenade is being removed. Combat Tactician is being moved from level 1. New functionality, reduce the cooldown of minigun by 4 seconds. Reduce it further when you use run and gun, which is your dash. So this used to make it to where you would reduce the cooldown of your your minigun by 8 seconds whenever you use run and gun. Now it's a flat 4 seconds off, and then you also reduce it by 4 seconds if you dash. This will be great if you're going bigger they are, but not actually necessary. New talent, Melting Point. After hitting enemies, Frag Grenade deals 75% bonus damage over 3 seconds. Its damage is increased by 100% against minions, mercs, and monsters. Whoa! That gives him really easy wave clear. He actually already had pretty decent wave clear, but I do wonder how powerful this is against mercs. Does this give him the ability to do bruisers quickly at level 7? Potentially. That's interesting. You don't need this talent in bigger they are, but you would probably want it if you went in the rhythm. But so this is probably going to be more the meta talent. And level 20 can do this all day. Cooldown reduction increased from 4 to 5 seconds, and that's your Q. So there's a lot of Q talents that you can do. They increase your armor and stuff while your Q's going. They do more damage the longer Q's going. So this is pretty good for that. It still isn't really up to like a level 20 talent, but it's pretty good. Bob and Weave no longer passively increases Tychus' basic attack range by 1.5. Additional functionality after using run and gun increase the basic attack range. I don't think this is... I mean, you have 3 dashes, so like you'll have really long attack range, especially if you take the level 1 as well. But again, is this equivalent to the level 20 talents that you have? I don't know. I do still feel like the meta build might be Q on the 13, 16, and 20, and then bigger they are, and now this melting point for the early levels. I do think this is going to put Tychus higher up in both Storm League and the competitive scene. The competitive scene because it's going to make your bigger they are a little bit more effective and a little bit safer. And Storm League, I think that the changes to Q build and the increased wave and camp clear is going to make you a little bit more consistent, even if the team isn't like drafted around you. So overall, I think that these are changes that'll really bring Tychus up. And then we have some bug fixes. So overall, I just want to talk to you guys real quick about a couple things. These are really good changes. I like this balance patch. I think they did a lot of stuff really, really well. They buffed a lot of heroes with low win rates like Alex Straza and Anduin. They nerfed a lot of meta heroes like Ana. And they also nerfed a lot of, Ana and Imperius. They also nerfed a lot of what people were considering overpowered heroes like D.Va, E.T.C, and Cho'gall. And then they also just really affected some underutilized stuff. So I think this was a successful balance patch Very, very good. And there's a lot of things that I want to try out after that, which is going to be pretty fun. A lot more Tychus in particular. But with all of that being said, there's one other thing that I want to mention to you guys before we go. I talked about it in the last video, but I do still want to share more about Chili Mountain. If you guys have not heard about Chili Mountain, they run events for all skill levels, as well as they run events in all regions. Unlike most other Heroes of the Storm events or tournaments, they don't usually run these events in Korea, and oftentimes things like CCL don't run events in North America, sorry, in Europe. So Chili Mountain has been running events in all regions, as well as they run events for a couple other games if you're someone like me who plays a few different games, not just Heroes of the Storm. So I highly recommend checking out their website, but particular, make sure to follow them on social media so that you can actually see when they're running different events. Their Twitter is rather active, so I recommend going to their website, heading down to their Twitter, giving that a follow, and then feel free to join their Discord as well. You should be able to keep up on all of their events with that. They are a sponsor, but at the same time, I am one of the casters for it. So I do cast for them usually about every other month or so, but they do have some awesome casters. So check out Chili Mountain. They are an awesome group. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos.